So people have been complaining about Condi Thief recently, which is kind of funny because maybe a week or two ago people were saying Thief is unplayable and I created my Thief is fine video, and now people are saying Thief is too strong. So it really just shows you that people have no real idea about the reality of the situation, and they just use hyperbolic language to kind of further their agenda on balanced discussion. So here I am to give you guys the reality of the situation. So, do I think Condi Thief is overpowered? A little bit. Probably not as much as some people are saying, like, make Condi Thief unplayable. Nobody enjoys playing against Condi Thief. It's not fun and it's not interactive. The reality is, it's actually kind of fun to play, and, obviously it's not that fun to play against, but there are some ways that you can actually play around Condi Thief. So it can actually be somewhat interactive. So I'm going to show you guys in this video how to play against the Condi Thief build. I'm going to show you my build because this is actually the better version of the build, not the the Papega version that people are using. And then I'm going to kind of suggest some nerfs that the build can use to make it more interactive and probably less free to get kills on. So I'm going to show you this build. Basically, I take Deadly Ambition. This just gives you a little bit of poison, but the condition damage is the main reason you take that. You take Even the Odds because that gives you Vuln on your burst, which gives you a cover Condi. I take Improv because this gives you a ton of survivability, and it recharges sometimes your Venom, which gives you more damage too. So it's just really good, and it's good for playmaking too. A lot of people take Potent Poison, but it's literally just a damage increase. So it gives you kind of like no utility. And it's not like too many of your abilities really stack poison anyways. So, and if you're using Panic Strike, that's not giving you really that much damage. But anyways, I take Bewildering Ambush as well. Like, basically when you do your burst, you want to have as many cover Condis as possible. So we'll talk a little bit about how cover Condis work. And then I take Trickster as well because I'm using Withdraw and Roll for Initiative. Basically, Bountiful Theft is really good, but you don't really need to remove Aegis that often to like make your steal not miss. It's basically only better to have Bountiful Theft really versus like Guardians. So that's why that's the case, that I like Trickster more. I do use Daggerstorm or Thieves Guild sometimes. It just depends on the situation. Thrill of the Crime. This is sort of like a Wizard's Amulet build, so it is nice to have some Fury, but the Swiftness is really the main reason why you take Thrill, because I don't take a rune that gives you speed, and it's not like you're running Acro or Daredevil. So then in Shadow Arts you have just tons of Condi clones, by the way, with Trickster and Shadow's Embrace. Someone sent me a mail. Leeching Venoms is also really good because whenever you go in stealth, you will get a poison modifier and lifesteal, which just adds to your burst. And then Rending Shade is really important too because it gives you a lot of boon rip, and against like resistance on Condi revs, it's actually a pretty high priority, so you can steal the resistance from them while you're bursting them. But yeah, so that's pretty much the build. And so how does the build actually play? So the main burst that you want to do is you have your Venom out, right? Potentially, if there's teammates near your target, you would share Venom after you steal, but I'm just showing you this now. So you press 5 into steal, then you press 1, and then you press 3, and that gives you the most damage. And as you can see, I already lost a lot of the conditions on the target, so your confusion only lasts 3 seconds. So if you're playing against someone who's playing Condi Thief, you don't want to be like spamming out cleanse in the first 3 seconds, because first of all, the confusion is going to rip you while you're trying to cleanse all the other Condis, and then if you cleanse the confusion, well then you've cleansed the Condi that's going to get off anyways. So what you need to do is when the Condi Thief steals to you, do not panic. Wait 3 seconds. So as you can see here, there's going to be like 4 Condis on you. So if you have like a 4 Condi cleanse after like the first, couple seconds, because what's it called? So weakness. Yeah, the weakness is going to happen like 3 seconds, and then the confusion is going to happen 3 seconds. So you don't want to cleanse weakness because that doesn't do damage to you. And you don't want to cleanse confusion because that's just going to run off anyways. So you want to wait at least like 3 seconds before you use your big cleanse. And that will make sure that you cleanse, bleeding, torment, and poison. And then you'll have probably a 3rd Condi or a 4th Condi on you as well, like vulnerability. So yeah, you want to make sure you're cleansing what you want to cleanse. If you have like say you're a guardian, use contemplation of purity, then yeah, you can just use that immediately. Like if you have a more than 4 Condi cleanse, just use that. But yeah, save your Condi cleanse for when a lot of the cover Condis come off, because this build doesn't really have that many cover Condis outside of its burst. Now obviously a good Condi Thief will have a little bit more play around that, and it'll be able to put on some cripples and stuff like that. But for the most part, yeah, that's how it's going to work. So yeah, understanding how cover Condis work, and that the thief profession is actually kind of bursty with its Condis, and it doesn't actually have that many cover Condis because of that. And when it used to be like a Daredevil build, you had a lot of cover Condis, but now that build doesn't really exist because the cover Condis are like 1 second. So yeah, just know how to play around their burst. And then there's another thing. So say there's a lot of builds running around right now that use like shadow arts with hidden thief, and then they use the heal ability that gives you stealth, and then they have shadow refuge as well. How to play around shadow refuge is pretty easy, to be honest. So we'll just assume I'm using shadow refuge and this, and pretty much what you want to do is when you see someone go in stealth, you know that they're going to use their sneak attack very soon, right? So if they're using withdrawal, right, you know that they have stealth for 2 seconds after they use their heal. So that means they have only 1 chance to use their sneak attack on you before they get revealed, because the stealth only lasts 2 seconds. So you pretty much know if they're using withdrawal, you want to dodge, like wait a second after they go into stealth, because this is the main damage dealer. It gives them might, it gives them a lot of bleeding, and it's also giving them boon rip or steal, and then also does decent power damage. So yeah, you want to be dodging this attack most of the time, but they're in stealth, so you need to know the tell of it, which is basically you're just seeing like this. I'll show you here. It's like, yeah, it's that kind of animation. So if you see that coming out of stealth, you want to dodge that, and then you kind of know where the thief is in stealth if they do that, right? Because you can see where it's right here, right? So you know where they are if they use that. If they miss and if they don't hit and they're still in stealth, they have another second before they can use that again. So they could use like their 2 skill or their 4 skill from range, but they really can't hit you from range if this is on cooldown. So you want to be kind of like aware that, like, if you see that animation from stealth and you dodge it, you're kind of safe for like another second or 2. So you don't need to like spam dodges out. And you also know that if they use hide in shadows, they've got stealth for 6 seconds. So they'll go into hide in shadows. They can use it once immediately, and then it'll go on cooldown. They can use it twice, and then they can maybe use it a 3rd time. So they've only got really 2 chances to use their sneak attack while in hide in shadows, and that's, that gives you 2 windows to understand when their burst is coming. And then if they use shadow refuge, then yeah, you kind of don't really know when they're going to do their burst, right? So yeah, what you want to do against a thief that's in stealth, right, is you basically want to just pressure them when they use their thing, because they can't do anything, right? You can get Shadow Striked from melee range, so you do want to be careful about that. That's another thing. So Shadow Strike is one of their big damage dealers, and the only way they can enable that is in melee range. But the only real gap closer they have is Steel. So if you know when their Steel is up, you obviously want to be dodging that. If you can bait it out or somehow, predict when it's going to happen, obviously dodging Steel is insane, right? Because you don't get confusion, you don't get poison, you don't get vuln, they don't get a stolen ability, or they don't get reset. So yeah, if you can dodge Steel, that's insane, because that just gives you so much value. But also, you want to be dodging Shadow Strike. So if they don't have Steel up, a lot of their damage is going to come from Shadow Strike Repeater. And you're giving them a lot of value by allowing them to use Shadow Strike, because when they get Repeater, they don't really need to go back in for more damage, because they can just spam Repeater, and that gives them plenty of bleeds, right? So them landing Shadow Strike is kind of it's big. Like, you see they have a lot of Torment on it, and then you get the Repeater skill, and it gives them a little bit of a self peel if there's not a valid path. Maybe it won't, but so what a lot of thieves do is they'll just go in melee range and then they'll just spam 3, right? So what you want to do is you want to put like a blind out. Blind can be bad though, because they'll just spam 3 and then press it again, and then they'll remove the blind. They'll use like 8 initiative, but they'll still get the Shadow Strike. This build doesn't really use a lot of initiative, so as long as they get it once, that's good enough. So what you really want to do is you want to just evade them and kind of like manipulate their positioning. So say like I'm a Condi Thief and I'm trying to kill someone, and I'll just go to this mob right here. So like say this moving mob right here is someone I'm trying to kill. If I go up to them and try to use my 3 and they move out of range, well, that still landed, but yeah, if they move out of range and then I miss, and then they keep moving out of range and I keep missing, then I'm going to just not be able to do that much damage. I'm going to only be doing auto attacks, really. So yeah, basically you don't want to get in melee range of a Condi Thief, because that's how they get their damages from Shadow Strike. When they don't have their Steel combo, obviously. When their Steel combo's up, then they can do it freely. So yeah, just manipulate their positioning and kind of abuse them, and know that it's very predictable when they want to use their Shadow Strikers, because they're going to go in in melee range to do it. So yeah, just dodge once they're like about to go into melee range of you, because this is an instant cast skill. So you can't really, you can just predict when they're going to use it. You can't really react to it. So that's one of the issues with Condi Thief right now, and I'll talk about that later. But yeah, basically the 3 skill and the sneak attack are the 2 damages that they pretty much have on their build. And then obviously their Steel burst that you want to know how to cleanse it, because you can't always play around it. You have to play around it by cleansing, not by kind of like dodging it. So yeah, that's pretty much the way that you play around Condi Thief. Know how to predict when they can use their sneak attack by knowing that there's a internal cooldown on the sneak attack, and how long their stealth durations are, and knowing that in melee range they have Shadow Strike, which is a big burst damage enabler. So yeah, that's pretty much it. So there's three main things you need to know about Condi Thief. So do I think Condi Thief is busted? Yeah, I kind of think it is a little bit busted. It's very easy to play, but I also think that it's kind of fun to play, because it's just like an archetype that's different, and it allows you to have like a kind of like a damaging option for thieves, right, instead of just like a burst option. But the thing is, Condi Thief is bursty and it has like DPS, so I think that it should have a little bit less burst. In my opinion, Power Thieves should be more bursty, and Condi Thief should be more DPS and like sustained damage. So one thing that I think is, first of all, that what is it, spider venom? Yeah, so I use spider venom. Spider venom should probably be reduced in the stacks that it gives you to like 4 instead of 6. So that'd be only in PvP and World v World. But yeah, the burst of Condi Thief is basically that when they do their like steel combo, they also have all this like poison that they put on top of it, and then they have the life siphoning and stuff, and that's kind of fine, to be honest, by themselves. But when they give it to their teams or to their, you know, thieves guild, the spider venom just does way too much, and it scales up way too much. So I think, yeah, maybe just lowering it to 4 instead of 6 would be good, and it would still allow you to get some nice damage off. And it would also give a little bit more kind of like variety to Condi Thief builds, because every Condi Thief does use spider venom. So yeah, spider venom, reduce that a little bit. And Thieves Guild, honestly, is kind of busted too, because it lasts for 30 seconds. It really shouldn't last that long. I would say reduce it in duration, kind of like they did to Lich Form, to like 20 or 15 seconds, so that you can kite it out and, you know, not have to kill them and make that the only way to counterplay, because just kiting for 30 seconds is a little bit too long and it makes it too much presence. So yeah. Next, I think that the 3 skill is fine. Like the repeater, it should give you damage for, you know, it should reward, you know, it should be rewarding for landing Shadow Strike. So I think repeater is fine. It's not like you gain that much from it, right? Like it's not giving you that much. But the thing is, Shadow Strike is too easy to land, if that kind of makes sense. Like it's an instant cast skill, and you can kind of like spam it. So that was kind of what I was talking about before when I said blind is useless versus Shadow Strike, because they'll just press it again, and they'll just immediately get it through. Like even Aegis, like you can't play around Shadow Strike because they'll just use it again. The only way you can play around it is with positioning. So I think that there should be more ways to play around it by using like blinds and stuff like that, and blocks. So one way to do that is to make Shadow Strike have a cast time. So Shadow Strike is currently, it doesn't even say it has a cast time, it just says initiative cost. So I think giving it a half-second cast time, like Cloak and Dagger, would be pretty good, because if we'll just roleplay for a second and assume that I'm using Shadow Strike when I use Cloak and Dagger. So if I use Cloak and Dagger, or sorry, I just messed up the roleplay. So if I use Shadow Strike, and you see the animation like this, then you're going to be able to dodge it reactively, and you're going to be able to punish them, because first of all, they don't get the self-peel. So if you're playing aggressively versus a Condi Thief, you can actually stick to them, because what you can do is you can jump on top of them, and then when you see them go for the Shadow Strike, you know, then you can dodge that and then stay aggressive on them. Whereas if they have an instant cast Shadow Strike, then they just get to reposition and kite you basically for free. So yeah, it's just way too easy to do like your combo enabler, because it's basically an instant cast skill. So yeah, make that a half-second cast so that there's more counterplay to it, more of a, you know, tell to it, and then that should be pretty good. I think that this is a little bit too high damage to like Shadow Strike. Like it gives you repeater, which is a pretty good reward, but it also gives you 4 stacks of torment for 6 seconds. That does quite a bit of damage. So I think you should reduce the duration of the torment. So that's another thing. Like Condi Thief is really high damage and really high burst. So it shouldn't have like that high of a stack of Condis, you know, 4 torment for that long. So either reduce the stack to like 3, or reduce the duration to like 4 seconds instead of 6, and then it should be good. Now remember, in World versus World you have condition duration still, so this is really busted in World v World. I've actually been playing this build in World v World, and yeah, you are pretty busted. But yeah. So Shadow Strike, maybe put that down to like 3 stacks of Torment or 2 stacks. You don't want to over nerf Condi Thief because it is a pretty fun build to play, and people don't actually complain about Condi Thief when it isn't viable, to be honest. So like, why not allow people to play, you know, a build? So yeah, that's pretty much it. I would nerf the 3 a little bit, nerf the poison, nerf Thieves Guild, and then the sneak attack. So sneak attack does quite a bit of power damage and has pretty long duration of bleeding. I don't think you can really change the stack to be lower, so it would just reduce the duration of the bleed. So like the auto attack does like a long bleed for 5 seconds, and then the sneak attack does a long bleed for 7 seconds. So maybe reduce the duration from 7 to 5 seconds on the bleed there, so that you still get pretty good burst, even if look at the actual base damage. It does like 4,000 damage, and it's such an easy skill to land because it's ranged, and it's not just 1 hit, it's like 4 hits or 5 hits. So you can't really counter it with Aegis. For a skill that's so easy to land and so rewarding, it shouldn't be that rewarding, I guess. Or it should be harder to land, but I don't think it should just be less rewarding, right? So yeah, just lower the duration of the bleeds, lower the duration of the torment, or lower the stacks, and then lower the actual count of the venoms so it doesn't scale up too much. And then yeah, Thieves Guild. Those are the 4 changes I would make. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I think Condi Thief is fine, to be honest. It's not that overpowered. It's just, it's new and people haven't figured out how to play against it yet. That's kind of like the norm for people, is they don't really like to discuss balance. They just like to say, oh, this class does this, then let's nerf that, because they don't like it. So yeah, that's pretty much all I want to say. I'm going to show you guys some Condi Thief gameplay because I think it's still a fun build to play. So the issue with Condi Thief is that while it is quite good at 1v1ing as opposed to most Thief builds, it's actually pretty decent at 1v1ing, it's not very good at the role of 1v1er. So what I mean by that is, in Conquest PvP, you're not always going to be in a 1v1. Sometimes you're going to be 1v2, sometimes you're going to be 2v1, sometimes you're going to be 1v3. And in those situations where you're outnumbered as Pistol Dagger Thief, you're actually way disadvantaged compared to any other Thief build, because you don't really have any self-peel, because the Pistol Dagger set requires you to be in melee range to get stealth, and then you need to land an attack, or to reposition you need to do the exact same thing. You need to be in melee range and land an attack, and it's just too easy for people who are +1ing you to like pressure you into not being able to do that. So it really just leaves you as a sitting duck, to be honest, and you can get focused very easily and get killed. So it's actually really easy to focus a Condi Thief, but that's why I take Trickster with Roll for Initiative and Withdraw. So a lot of Thieves are taking Shadow Refuge and Hide in Shadows, but those are really good in like a +1 situation or like a 1v1 situation. It's very easy to play around them if you've got actually competent teammates on the other team, because they can easily cleave your Shadow Refuge, or they can just interrupt your heal. So that's why I take Withdraw and Roll for Initiative, and it just allows you to have kind of like a movement while in your Pistol Dagger set, because like Dagger, Pistol, Sword, Dagger, they all have movement that you can use regardless of whether you hit the enemy, right? So it allows you to kind of use that mobility to peel for yourself. So with my build, you get a little bit more survivability, and it allows you to kind of play the role of Thief better, because you have movement skills from your utilities rather than from your weapon skills. So that's why I like that. But because of that, I'm going to have a little bit less damage in like +1 situations, and vice versa. Other builds are going to be easier to focus down. So that's kind of an issue with Condi Thief, right? Is that a lot of their value comes from small scale situations where they can control when they want to land their cloak and dagger, when they want to land their shadow strike. And other than that, they have to enable a lot of their combos with steel, and because they have steel with a confusion modifier to it, it's going to be a longer cooldown. It's like a 26-second cooldown on steel because of they're not taking sleight of hand. So a lot of times all you have to do is play around their steel, right? And then just don't get hit in melee range, like keep your distance from them. And one way you want to play around the steel, right, is just knowing how cleanses work. So first in, last out. That means the conditions to the left are the ones that will be cleansed first. So if you see a bunch of like poison to the left, yeah, you can do your Condi cleanses. Sometimes it's a little bit more random, but it depends on the skills that you're using. But in World vs. World, I was using the Antitoxin rune to really good effect. Even on like a Condi build, like I'm actually using Antitoxin Condi Thief in the footage here. And it's just kind of, you're immune to Condis. So, I mean, that's the issue, is people complain about Condi builds, but they're running really greedy power builds that don't have any Condi cleanse on them. So, I mean, just run Condi cleanse, guys. Come on. So, if you like the video, give it a thumbs up. And also subscribe if you want more videos like this. And leave a comment down below. Do you think Condi Thief is fun and interactive, or do you think it needs to be deleted from the game?